Hi there. Welcome to Tech Talk Weekly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our weekly show where we hit you up with 3 or 4 interesting tech stories, find something fun about the library for you, and send you on your way in about 15-20 minutes. Creation Station at broward.org comes right to me if you have any suggestions for stories for the week. Today, I am lucky to have Allison Grubs, the director of Broward County Library System, on board with us today. Thank you, Allison, for being here.
Hey Bob, thank you for having me.
How is things going with the library system?
Oh my gosh, we have so much going on. And, right now we're in the midst of early voting. So we are having oodles of people come through and reintroduce themselves to libraries during this period.
Yeah. And the big news that you managed to pull off just 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Tell me more.
2 weeks ago, it feels like an eternity already.
Yeah.
So we have gone fine free, which means that we are no longer assessing overdue fines for materials that you check out. They only charge anything if you keep it past 45 days and it goes to an assumed loss status,
Just
which
bring the stuff
most
back.
people turn things back
Yeah.
in on time or even early,
Yeah.
especially our new stuff. People recognize that there's a high demand for it, so they churn through it pretty quick.
And if you really have a problem with finding the books in the house afterwards, get digital. They just disappear automatically for you. You don't even have to worry about returning them.
Which is the best thing for me. I think right before
Oh
we
God.
went fine free, I paid something like $16 in
Ooh.
overdue fines for myself. Nobody else in my household, just me. So I've gone digital pretty much because even though I work in a library, cannot be trusted to bring things back on time.
Yeah. That's also a nice little point. Yeah, all the staff, we all had to pay fines all along, all these
Oh,
many
yeah.
years. So yeah. Let's get to these stories today. This first one is slightly complicated and kind of weird. Um, your brain is a quantum computer, maybe. If you've been following along in the show, every few months there's a new story about some quantum computing and how does this work and what happens here. By the way, if you don't know quantum computing, we have books on that for you. Quantum Physics for Babies. There you go. Or Quantum Information for Babies. We've got these at the library. You can check them out. Come on in and use them. It'll get you the basics of what quantum stuff when we talk about these things are. Um, but it turns out multiple points in your brain are operating at the same time and they're not connected. What, Allison, did you ever think about how you think?
I do. I actually just a few weeks ago, I was in Atlanta visiting one of my best girlfriends, and we were having a conversation about how she organizes and stores her memories. And for her, she very much keeps her memories almost like it's a file cabinet in her brain. And she can she has a very strong memory palace. I have a very weak memory palace. That's not how I organize my thoughts or my memories. And so I have much weaker recollection of memories than she does. So I am pretty familiar with the really baseline understanding of how brains and memories and awareness, consciousness, how that all ties together.
And we just did a story 2 weeks ago about that, about they think they may have found out where consciousness actually is in the brain
Mhm.
and what parts need to be activated for it to keep going. But yeah, this was a really interesting way of doing this because it kind of figures out it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, anything. This seems to just work for all brain types, all personality types, as you were saying, everything like that. For me, I can forget tons and tons and tons of stuff. And then all I need to do is pick up the phone, call someone, start talking, and like, oh, bam, now I remember all 26 things I was supposed to be doing. For me, everything's just linked auditory for some reason like that. Then our next story is robots. And something different about robots. This is actually, there's 2 companion pieces here. There's this one here about robots in our own image, and one about retrofitting them. And one of the ideas is that people presume you want robots that look like a human, perhaps like that. Maybe not so quite so scary.
Hmm.
But that's not the best way to create when you're beginning from scratch. That's not the best way to create things. And so the whole idea of retrofitting, they built these robots that could perform a lot of cooking tasks in kitchens, and they built them with what they thought they needed: four fingers and a thumb and a regular human type grip. And then they found out, no, actually the best grip is a three-fingered grip, with one of them being a broader paddle for your thumb. What do you think of as friendly robots versus unfriendly robots, Allison?
Well, it depends. So if we're saying something like retrofitting, are you designing these robots to fit in existing spaces that also at the same time are accommodating human beings? So let's say for this one, the flippy robot,
Yeah,
which flips burgers, for example. Is that alongside other humans? In which case, that space is the physical space around it is built for humans. And so that might make a little bit more sense, or it might not. It's so situational.
yeah,
um, does this arm that hangs down from the ceiling on a rail that just moves back and forth with the three fingers might be best for that physical space. And in an environment such as an Amazon warehouse where they have the grid on the floor, right, for the robots to almost drones, right?
yeah. They
Where
have
they just move
essentially they're
back
like
and
giant
forth, and they have
Roombas that
the
just move. Yeah,
right, the multi-directional
yeah,
wheels or the railings in the ground, depending on which iteration of it is. Those are very boxy, low to the ground. There's some speed built into it.
yeah,
Boston Dynamics with the dog shaped robot that they've come up with. It all depends on the functionality of it. And is a bipedal human shape best? Maybe not, because then you have to, I mean, if you're tall and angular, you're not necessarily going to be the most balanced. So you also have to figure out all of the internal mechanics for it to have good balance, not tip over, succumb to gravity, right? So how you are going to use the robot, I think, should really determine the shape of it. But
yeah.
then, there's a friendliness aspect to it. There's a car in Europe. I just saw it on TikTok, and it has this cute little bubble on the dash. I think it's called the Nemi, Nemi, and it just has this little cartoon, big eyes, the like aggressive cuteness factor to
Yeah,
it.
and
So it's
I've
not
seen that
so
on some of
intimidating,
this. Yep, yep.
right?
I got a thing for our last story about that too. There's a new thing there. I've got a picture up, by the way, the Temi robot, which is something the library system has going around at the various branches now, helping customers and stuff as we're testing out new models and new modes of customer assistance. That one's a friendly little robot without any arms and face, but it still does its thing. And so far, all the customers seem to have really liked it. And then there's another type of robot, social robots.
Hmm.
And this type here is almost like, and this is very much what's called a cobot. It's a robot that is supposed to be there and coexisting with people, like you said, either working together or being part of it. And here in the University of Alberta, they've done a study on using these social robots to help with stuttering. And they found that having the physical robot in the space with them was better than having the robot on a screen or interacting with the screen, that having a physical presence, even though the person knew it was just a robot, having that physical robot sit with them and help them practice made their stuttering go away, or made them be able to concentrate and work on that process faster and more with more confidence than they could looking at the flat screen TV or on your phone trying to use the same techniques.
Absolutely. And I think that having that sort of physical space engagement definitely makes a difference. For better or for worse, we as human beings have this innate need to congregate, to belong, to be in these social settings. And, we all have different tolerances for that, right? So I I occasionally self-describe myself as aggressively um, extroverted, and but my social battery can wear out, and I need some time to recharge. And if somebody is putting so much mental effort into speech therapy that there's you're not also having to worry about judgment with a robot. You're not having to worry about micro body language where you're focusing on that piece of it. And I was also looking in this article about keeping autistic children engaged, and
Yeah.
that is very common for all types of people who are on the autism spectrum, right? Is recognizing social cues can be very difficult for some, and just navigating through that minefield of the social
Yeah.
emotional environment. It is exhausting,
Yep. And
right?
those things that we give off without even knowing about it, those little
Absolutely.
micro emotions
Just
that
like
flash over your
the
face.
tiniest little
Yeah.
bit of your eyebrow going up can send somebody into a tailspin of what is she thinking? What does this mean? What are
What
the
did I do wrong? Uh-oh. Wait
implications?
a minute. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And a physical robot is not going to send those messages across, so you can focus on the face, focus on the actual physical form of somebody, without in a judgment-free space.
Yeah.
But the robot and the AI can provide greater feedback, can provide assistance. So it's beyond just, what we have at the library, which is Tales and Tales, reading to the dogs, which help you grow your reading confidence in a judgment-free space by having, a creature that looks at you in a non-judgment way, because dogs are dogs, they just want to love
It's
you,
just want to live
right?
you. Yeah.
But they can't provide feedback. They can't provide assistance
Yeah.
with a word or with overcoming a speech issue like stuttering, whereas these robots can. And I find it absolutely fascinating, the studies that are coming out and where science is taking us with
It's going to be really
this.
good. Yeah. That, and we also have that Dan Marino lab that hopefully will be
Yep.
reopening in the spring for people on the autism spectrum for interview skills and practicing those sorts of things too. Yeah. It's one of those things that there's a lot of complications, and it's just like all you need is a little bit of access and it can make someone's life so much better.
Yes.
I don't know if this is making our lives better though, this last story. So, what kind of car do you drive, Miss Allison? Do you have all these gizmos and gadgets on your car that do all these things?
Some. So my car is a little older, and I'm currently looking in the market for a new car that does have the gizmos and gadgets. So I drive a Ford Focus. She's a little older. She's a 2014, but she's been a good little car, and she's my first touchscreen car.
Uh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, so this story talks all about where some of this adaptive technology and the new features that some people just feel they need to have on the car, where they take it a step too far. Most everybody's probably heard about the craziness that happens on Tesla with their so-called autopilot. That's not really autopilot. Um, but even simpler things like adaptive cruise control
Hmm.
that will speed up or slow down as you get closer to another vehicle. My wife's got that in her car. It's really nice when you're out on the turnpike and you're going along, but yeah, still have to pay attention to those cars around you because you may find yourself coming to a dead stop really fast.
Right.
And this
So
also with the
my
self-driving, I want to
experience.
get you this one, Allison, real quick, is this is the story about the googly eyes. For those self-driving cars, by putting googly eyes on the front that look back and forth as the radar is skimming, they have found that other cars and pedestrians react better to those autonomous extra things on the car when they can see the eyes that are moving in relation to that. That was
So
a study
other
from like a couple of weeks
people.
ago.
So
Yeah,
you're
other
putting
people
the
feel better
googly
about
eyes on your
you
car for
because
other
you,
people to
yep,
respond?
exactly.
Hmm,
You put the googly eyes up there just like headlights, and other people
fascinating.
respond to your car better because that makes them feel like your car is paying attention to them better. For all of these things, the lane avoidance, where you cannot really take your hands off the steering wheel. I had one of my previous cars had every single possible things because I got a dealer one that had to show off everything, and it would not let you take your hands off the wheel. It didn't care that it had lane assist. It was if you took your hands off for more than I think it was like 3 seconds, bam, the car would just start shaking. You would get a beep, 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 beep. You get a whole alarm
Hmm.
go off. Like, no, grab that wheel again. Stop doing this. So yeah, a lot of these things. But the weird thing I found out about this article is we don't even have a plan yet for the traffic safety at the federal level to govern any of these things.
Right.
I'm like, can we
And
plan
we're
ahead?
seeing these. It's interesting. There's a YouTuber that I just was introduced to, and he looks at city planning. And he has a video. I need to watch it again because he goes into so much engineering detail about how um, cities that are planned for with car vehicle mobility in America at least make more sense long term than those because the federal government just is not at this point in a space to commit to broad and robust uh, local public transit infrastructure.
Yeah.
And with that being the case, you have to plan for how do people get around? They get around in suburban and rural areas, mostly via car.
Mm.
And so you have to plan accordingly. And having a city, say, in the outskirts of an urban area that's really big on bicycling and pedestrian doesn't make sense because most people can't get around that way and they're not going to use that space. So is it wasted space or are you planning long term for, say, urban sprawl that will
Yeah.
eventually get there and eventually bring robust or more robust public transit where before some might not even exist? I grew up in a county that didn't even have public transit when I grew up. I didn't ride a bus or a subway until I visited Washington, D.C. for the first time. And I was in high school at that point. So,
And I
um,
grew up in Detroit, just thinking that's just the way things are.
right, right. So, and I travel so much more now, and I just see these small kids, elementary school age, who just so confidently get on the subway or get on the bus to get around, and I'm just like, man, I didn't have that confidence when I was their age, or knowledge really on
Yeah.
how to do that. So, but the perks of all of this is how does all of this safety measurement that's built into your vehicle, how does it correlate to each other? Do they have the capabilities to talk to each other? And not only that,
Fabled promise of
recognizing, how
5G.
often do we see on social media where someone is sitting there recording their car, and it's saying there's somebody walking in front of their car, and they're just sitting in front of their garage and there's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
So how reliable is this technology, and where is it going to take us in the future? Is it going to become, there's all this consternation about subscription based uh
No.
subscription based perks,
Yeah,
if you will,
BMW
on
did
a
a thing
car.
about that last
Right, like,
year.
is
Yeah.
BMW going to make their heated seats subscription based only? And New Jersey legislature is actually stepping in about that first. But is lane assist going to become a subscription based model? Right, pedestrian safety issues, or are they going to become like backup cameras where Congress made it a requirement in, I believe, beginning 2015, 2016, thereabouts, where every
Yeah.
new car had to have it. So it's going to be quite interesting to see where the studies take us and how legislatures respond and how drivers also respond to it.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things is we still have as you pointed out, a tremendous amount of older cars on the road, and
Hmm.
most of this technology is only available in stuff that was made in 2018 and later. So
And
all,
higher trims. You're
yeah,
not even seeing
yeah,
some of the stuff on basic trim levels
yeah,
of new cars.
yeah. I know that's, in fact, that's my wife noticed that on my new car because we have the still roughly the basic trim level of it. And she's like, "Where's all your cameras?" Because the previous one had full 360 cameras. This one,
Mm.
the current model we have only has the backup camera. And she's like, "Wait, what happened to?" And I'm like, "Do we really need to have all those cameras at all times? It's nice, like 2 or 3 times when you're in a crowded parking lot, but beyond that, not on the roadways, not on anything else. I'm pretty happy with what we got right now." So, as always, all these stories are links are going to be on the show notes for you, so you can go find up and go do, because this is a long, long article that goes even more in depth in vehicle size and SUVs versus standard cars versus trucks versus et cetera, et cetera. So you want to go read this and come up with your own solutions for how your own driving behaviors should be adapted for what's going on out there.
Hooray for long form journalism, though. It's really
Yes.
interesting to go through those deep and in depth articles.
Yeah. There was one article that didn't make today's news on Bitcoin that Bloomberg put out. It's 40,000 words. And I was like, that's a bit much for our show. It's a novel. It seriously, it's broken
Yeah,
up into chapters and they had to put explainer guides in it and all these other things. And I'm like, no. Very cool, but no.
not today.
Today. Thank you so much for being here, Miss Allison. To where people's going to find you? You've got your Directors Book Club coming up again, don't you?
I do. So next week we're going to be at North Regional Library. I believe it's Thursday at 2. You can find me on Instagram at Allison Grubs with a little underscore after my last name, where it is all Directors Book Club all the time. And our book right now
And
is
quotes.
Graceland at Last by Margaret Rinkle, which is quite an interesting book. It is a collection of essays that she wrote for the New York Times about living in the South and all of the wonderful and all of the tragic and all of the unique things that make the American South the South. And as someone who I say I'm the trifecta of the South. My mom is from Mississippi, my dad's from Alabama, and I am born and raised in Georgia. It has been quite a journey, and if you can see, I did quite a bit of
Yeah, I was gonna say,
annotating
and
with
they're color
tabs, and
coded and
yeah, I'm gonna
everything.
give you some
Yes.
ASMR with the tabs right now. But it's actually been quite a journey reading it, and so this will be our third and final discussion on this book next
And
week.
then the next,
So.
and then the next book picks up. But these are all in person, all around the library system, folks.
Mhm, mhm.
Do you have any more of the ones outside of the libraries? You just had one
We
earlier,
just
didn't
did
you?
our first one. It was our trial
Yeah.
for it, and I quite loved it to the point that I asked if for all of our future library renovations, we could put dimmer switches in our meeting rooms because the ambiance at the coffee shop was so fantastic that the idea of having another book club in, the harsh white lighting just made me sad. So,
We'll get you a little fireplace. We'll get a little electric fireplace for you. We'll
yes,
put that up. Not a
yes.
bad little thing.
Well, at the very least, what we could do is pull it up on like a YouTube
Oh yes.
channel and play
I
that on
actually
the
do
on
have
the
that.
TV screen.
I have that in my Amazon Prime subscription thing is a whole selection of fireplace
Mm-hmm.
things to play during the holiday season.
Yep.
It's coming up very fast.
Yes.
If anybody ever needs to look up any of these things, broward.org/library/events, everything is listed there for you where you can come find us. I'm going to throw up our final slide here for everyone. If you have a favorite person or library you'd like to see featured in 1 week, let me know. creationstation@broward.org. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.